One, two, three. This is Dr. Alex Avila with Love University, and we're back. This is where we learn how to love ourselves, others, and higher nature. I'm a psychologist, author, and speaker, and each week we talk about different topics on love, self-esteem, and relationships, and basically how to live the fullest life possible. And in the summer, we're actually very privileged to have great guests. I call them guest lecturers who come to Love University to impart their wisdom and knowledge. And today I have a very special guest, Ellen Gendelman, who is a licensed therapist, an author, also a matchmaker, and a grandmother, which is nice as well. And she's written a great book called Ice Cream Is Not Enough, and I think other books as well. So we're going to really have a great time talking to her about relationships and happiness and many different topics. Welcome, Ellen, to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, great to have you here. Now, I got to ask you, this is very curious. A Window Within, I believe, is your website. It's a very interesting title. What does that mean?
It means exactly what it says, that often when we're attempting to grow in our lives, we first need to look inside ourselves and go towards our authentic selves. It's only from that place that we can hope to be real in our other relationships.
That's interesting. I think you have, they said these are stories that you have that are conflicting from two different perspectives. You said a married daughter desperately needs help from her parents and has to go back with them, or an employee expects a raise and is fired. So tell us how that works. So are these like stories from two different dialogues, or how does it work?
Exactly. You've really done your homework. I'm very honored and impressed.
Sure, of course.
So I believe that the uniqueness of this book is that it doesn't have one answer. And that's because I really believe that one size doesn't fit all. We're so used to thinking that there's only one right way to view a situation, only one right answer. In fact, though, let's take the example of an employer-employee conflict. There's a very difficult situation and a company has to downsize. And an employer's been so happy with the young woman employee who's worked for her for 3 months. Her creativity, her teamwork, her enthusiasm, her presentation, she's already been stellar, and it looks like she has a bright future. But to be fair to everybody else who's been on the team for over a year, she makes the difficult, painful decision to let her go.
Yes.
And then, on the other side, we have the young employee who's given it her all, and she's trained and she's enthusiastic and she does more than what she's asked for. So she's called to the boss's office, understandably and legitimately expecting to get a raise, to get an offer, to get praise. And instead, she gets a pink slip.
Oh, man. That's sad. That's hard for her. So from the point of view of the employer, she's kind of sad to let her go. And the employee obviously is sad as well. So what is the bottom line here in these two different dialogues?
So the bottom line over here is that there's no one right way, that there's emotional validity in a conflict on both sides. And the moment we can start to understand that, understand our own emotional reactions, and then begin to understand someone else's, we already have the cornerstone towards empathy and towards conflict resolution.
I see. What if the boss is kind of a non-empathetic person and just says, I just want to get rid of this person, whatever reason they have, and the other person is a sensitive person? How do you counsel those people?
Excellent. What a great question. So I think what we're talking about here is understanding. In that case, the understanding is that we all have strengths and we all have weaknesses. And clearly, that boss is a boss who has other strengths, but empathy is not one of hers. And we can't change other people. And so if that boss would ask for help, I would cancel her and find out what her wall is, because I'm guessing that that is going to affect her relationships. Right. But if the employee is asking for counseling, then we can help her to understand that her boss's actions or lack of action does not have any say or any determination in her qualities, not as a worker and not as a person, and that she will find one door closed and another door open and will work through her pain.
That sounds like a very interesting perspective. I did a workshop last year on compassion in the workplace, and things like empathy and compassion may not be present in certain work situations. But I think teaching people that can be a positive, bringing some of these positive psychology things in there, gratitude, empathy, and so forth. The other thing that I think you talk about is you work, I think, with Gottman's research on marriage and something called the softeners, where couples can soften their conversation to make it, I guess, more empathetic and kinder. How do you deal with that? How do you use softeners?
Okay, so that's a great question. I have to tell you, I'm also a big fan of emotionally focused couples therapy, which is Dr. Sue Johnson's work, and that really guides me a lot alongside Gottman's research. And I think it starts out by creating alliance with each person in the couple and letting them know that their marriage is my client. The moment that they don't see me as a judge and a jury saying who's right and who's wrong, we can just look at the patterns and understand that the pattern and the dance between them is the villain.
Yes.
And when we understand and crystallize the dance, then we have the space to be able to look at it, slow it down, and change it if that dance is causing hurt, pain, anger, frustration.
I see. Now, how do you slow down a cha-cha to a waltz? What do you do to slow it down in the couple's conversation?
I love that. We teach our couples, first of all, I model the compassion.
Yes.
And the relationship itself is healing. And second of all, we really work on the pause button. I think you might agree that we live in a generation where everything needs to be instant. If our computer takes 2 minutes, you know, well, I mean, 5-minute oatmeal, by the way, is called old-fashioned.
I like that. That's good, yeah. We're in a very rushed society, and I talk a lot in some of the books I write on patience as a great kind of a muscle that we can develop. Because people are very impatient. They want everything quickly, especially in relationships. I'm sure you find that as well in your work.
Very much so. And we can help our couples push the pause button and slow it down, think, reflect, be mindful, be in the moment. It can be transformational.
That's amazing. Now, the other thing you talk about is that the most important thing is in life is, whether you're cared about. On your deathbed, you're not going to say, well, I should have worked 5 more hours, but, who are my loved ones? What can I say to them? So you said it's very important to focus on that and the relationships part of life. But a lot of people may not do that. They may take it for granted. They may ignore it at times. So how do you make people cognizant of the importance of love in life?
Okay, I love the question again. And I think what I might say to you is use an example they can relate to. Depending on the age of the person, I might ask them, on 9/11, when people on that plane thought they were dying, and they were, what did they regret? What did they want? And if they had another five minutes of life, what do you think they would have chosen to do?
Interesting. So that's interesting. So that puts it in the real perspective that, this is it. I talk about it in actually a book I'm writing, Invincible Youth. It's going to be coming out this year. That, we're a part of the lucky 7% club of the living. Let's say there have been 100 billion people that have died in the past, and there's 7 billion alive. So we're currently alive, which is an amazing thing. This is our time to shine and to do whatever we want in life and really live fully. And having that cognizant and the gratitude that goes with it can be an amazing thing.
I so agree, and talk about impact. I'm right there with you, because I think my father's death gave me, and as a young kid, that realization that time is limited, and I want to live life fully, and I want to experience, and I want to do for others. I want to make a difference, and we don't have forever. We just don't. And here, my father died at 35. My mother died at 47. I've already outlived both of them, but I won't tell you the details of that.
Sure. Oh, okay. Ellen, you have kind of a nice accent. It almost sounds like an East Coast accent. Are you from some part of the East or something?
Yes, I originally born and bred in the city of brotherly love. How does that fit in with your...
Oh, I like that. Okay. I mean,
we have
a little stereotype in the West. We think Easterners are kind of cold and kind of impatient. We think of like New York City. Is that really true or not necessarily?
Look, I think it's really the person more than the stereotype, although I think you could tell me more if you, depending where you live in California. I think sometimes when people have the challenge of living in a high stressful, you drive around, there's traffic, you can't park, that creates that inner stress and it's
Yes.
harder to be patient, where that wasn't my experience growing up in Philadelphia in a more suburban area.
Right.
It's not my experience in Oak Park, Michigan either, and it wasn't my experience in Melbourne, Australia for 11 years.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, definitely smaller rural areas, and people have more time for each other, and family orientation can be a different thing. Now, it says here that you're a matchmaker. Is that true, Ellen? Do you put people together for love and marriage?
I do. Now, I have to say it's mostly been in my own religious community because it's a system. It's a system that they use. But I have to date matched up 56 couples from date one to the wedding, and many of them. Actually, all of them, send me photos and their children, and
that's awesome.
It's beautiful.
Now, what do you call it? Is it called the Yentl, or what do you call it? The matchmaker in the Jewish? Is that right?
It's called Yenta means somebody who talks too much. So I hope you wouldn't call me that.
Okay, well, if you talk a lot, it's good too, right? But what do you call the matchmaker in the Jewish religion?
It's called a shadchan.
Oh wow, it's hard to pronounce that. Say it again.
Shadchan.
Oh wow. And then
yes, the cha is difficult if you're not used to it, right?
Interesting. So let's talk about relationship success, because that's an important thing in many people's lives. Even though they may not realize it, we often put more time in our car and then other things than we do in our relationship, and it is important. So how do you define a successful relationship?
I really, really like the way you ask questions. You just get right in there and dig. First of all, I think it's important for every person in a relationship to define it in the best way it works for them.
Right.
Having said that, you're asking me, and therefore I will respond. I think if both people are focused on giving to each other and not only on their own needs, and they're looking at love as a verb that means to give, then we have the building blocks for a successful relationship.
Interesting. And then you also talk about encouraging you to be your ideal self. So do you believe that's an important part of a long-term love relationship?
I believe it's an important part of all of our lives because we're individuals and then we are part of a group, the smallest group being a group of two in a personal relationship. But we're all part of communities, neighborhoods, many, many groups. And therefore, the more ideal self that we get to become, the more we actualize our abilities and our strengths, the more real we are, the more we enhance the world we live in, the more we enhance our relationships and our groups.
Yes.
It's about constantly growing, and in my mind, there's no ceiling, because who's to say that tomorrow I can't be better than the person I am today using the experiences and the learning that I have today?
Yes. I think, Ellen, you even say that even if you're the only one in the relationship that wants to work on it, it can still work. But I see a lot of, unfortunately, dysfunctional marriages where it may be the female or the male that wants therapy and the other one doesn't. How can you really make it work if only one person wants to go to therapy and the other one refuses?
Excellent. Because of what we said with the dance before, what that means is that, let's say we're dancing. If one person changes the dance, then the whole dance changes.
Right.
So if we have a reaction which constantly everybody's escalating, I'm pursuing and you're withdrawing, or I'm yelling and you're yelling back, whatever that pattern is, if I stop my pattern, even if you don't feel like working on it, the whole relationship has softened. You have nobody to fight with now. If I'm responding calmly and quietly, over time, there is still a chance. Clearly, it's ideal if both people want to work, but there's still a chance that if one person changes the dance, the whole dance changes.
Interesting. Now, I do a little salsa coming from a Latin background. What is your favorite dance, Ellen?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not such a big dancer. I guess usually like the kind of circle dances that we do in a group for a wedding, that kind of a thing.
I get it. Those are fun.
Yes.
Is that Avila? Is that the song?
That's one of them.
That's my favorite. Now, when you talk about dysfunctional couples, I think you mentioned there's something called the attack couple where they kind of fight with each other and have emotional triggers. So how do we help those couples that are really into like pit bulls to each other?
Absolutely. Well, the first thing we have to do is de-escalate. And I do a little bit of education of how the brain works. And I talk to adults like adults, but I'm going to give you a model the way I might speak to a young child I'm working with.
Yes.
For the child, I'll explain that when a person's upset, they have a feelings fever. And when they have a fever, they can't access their upstairs brain. So all they could do, it doesn't make them bad or anybody else bad, but all they could do was fight or flight, because the same way we go into that mode when there's a threat of physical danger, we do the same thing when there's a threat of emotional danger. And so when we teach them to pause, because we take away the bad. It's not your bad. You're wired that way. You're instinctively. But if you can pause and reach a place where you can be calm and then respond from a place of calm, you then have access to your upstairs brain. And we actually do that experientially in my office when they do escalate.
Okay. Because you also talk about the attack and withdraw partnership. So one is attacking, the other is withdrawing. But research shows that males actually have a higher physiological response to conflict. They have higher heart rates and blood pressure, so they often do want to withdraw, maybe go to the gym and work out or something. Is that a healthy thing to do a timeout or not?
Excellent. I think it very much depends how it's done. If it's set up that the other person knows, we'll use the wife as an example since you used the husband, that she knows this is not abandonment. This is not, I don't want to be with you anymore, so I'm slamming the door and I'm leaving and you have no idea when I'm back. This is, honey, I don't want to say anything I'm going to regret. I'm going to go out and I'll be back later. And obviously, because the upstairs brain is not accessible, the shorter, the briefer, the better. And if they set up beforehand, if I'm ever at a point that I don't want to say something in a way I regret or do something I regret, so I'm going out, then it's not perceived as abandonment. That's very healthy. It's very different than just slamming the door, leaving with no word if or when the person will return.
That's a good point. Abandonment, I guess, can be a big issue for a lot of people psychologically. The fear of that you're not loved by the person leaving. But if you have an agreement, like you said, then it's a different thing. Like, I'm going to go out, I may go shopping or I may go to the gym or something. And I'll be back a little bit later. And then you talk about, I guess, the withdraw couple. Basically, they avoid conflict at all times, and they're very passive in that scenario. What do you do with that kind of couple? They kind of like stay together for the children or whatever, or the legal things, but they don't really do much.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yes. So the withdraw couple is actually extremely hard, because at that point it's almost like they've given up. And the fact that they came to your office, we're going to work to help them frame that. If you're here, as much as you're both hurting and you've given up and these patterns have gotten the better of you for so long, but something brought you here. Can you remind me what it was like when you married the person, when you met the person, and we help them frame the relationship and remind themselves of that positive link. And then very slowly, we work to create a little bit of safety where, at least in my office, they might be able to turn towards each other, even to say, I'm too scared to trust you again, because every time I've done that, I've been hurt. But that is no longer withdrawal.
I see what you're saying. Like I say, you have a very trusting voice. You seem like a very kind of loving person in the way you speak.
You.
I guess you're a grandmother too, so almost like a nice grandma or something, right?
I am. Thank God.
But very happily so. And, there are a few problems in relationships, so I think we're doing a good job of talking about these things. So I'll give you a couple of them, and you tell me what you think.
Sure.
And you talk about it also. You said lack of empathy is a big problem in relationships. So how do we fix that?
Right. So we fix that in a way by modeling it. When they come in, the therapeutic relationship, as you well know, is a big part of the healing. So they're, instead of being judged and criticized, they're going to receive that empathy from me. We model, just like for our children as parents, we model the behavior we want. And number two, we're going to, by reflecting on everything that's going on in that office in the here and now, like I saw when your wife was just crying right now, you had a sad look on your face. Can you tell me about what was going on for you when you saw her crying? So by highlighting even the tiniest little gestures and magnifying them, we slowly help them build on and reinforce the empathy, which then feels so supportive and so good for them, so nourishing.
I like that. That's beautiful. So that you are the initial modeler of empathy to them, and then they pick it up.
Yes.
And then eventually, hopefully, they'll practice that on their own. Honey, you look like you're tired. Let me make a hot tub for you, or you're feeling a certain way, or things like that. And that's a great skill to have. To develop
it sure
that
is.
ability.
Right before I got on with you, my husband said to me, is there anything you need before you get on this podcast? Do you need a drink? Do you need anything?
A little chicken soup for the soul and everything. Oh, that's great. So you got him pretty much well understood. Huh? He knows what to do.
He knows what to do. We've been married for 35 years.
Oh, that's awesome. Now,
of course, I was 12 when I got married.
Right? Of course. I like that, yeah. Definitely. And I love your sense of humor. That's something I look for in therapists and people as well as, be able to laugh, enjoy life, and have joy. Because sometimes people take things very seriously and even themselves seriously. Do you ever bring a little humor into your therapy with your clients?
Very often. And I think you noticed it now. And again, I try to make sure that I'm real with myself. Yes. I own my mistakes. I laugh at myself. I actually recently just put out a Facebook clip where I went swimming with the earpod. What is it called? The AirPod for the Bluetooth. It was so comfortable in my ear, I forgot it was there.
Okay.
So I decided at least I could give people a laugh. So I wrote, the good news is it was really comfortable. The bad news is it fell out in the water. The good news is it came out in the filter. The bad news is it was destroyed,
Oh, okay. All right. So but good news, bad news. That's a classic story, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that. So then, so another problem, and this is something you can address, is lack of self-compassion. And people that don't forgive themselves. And I wrote a book actually called The 3 Secrets of Happiness. And we talk about that as basically self-forgiveness and dealing with regret. So how do you deal with that part of it? Let's say that they're hard on themselves individually and then that affects their relationship.
Excellent. We work very, very hard on that inner critic because I think you said it too at the introduction to your show, and clearly you bring it up in your book, that we need to have a relationship with self. To be in a relationship with somebody else, we need to be healthy within ourselves. And therefore, we need to recognize that we're okay. We're good. Yes, we're human. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to mess up. I think people we talk to ourselves in ways that we would rarely talk to anybody else. Yes. We fall and we say, you klutz, what's wrong with you? Mm. Someone else falls and we say, are you okay? Mm. Can I help?
Yeah, or if we fall, it's because someone's tripped us or something. So we blame other people sometimes for things that happen.
That's also true. But when we're talking about the hard on ourselves piece, often we're really our own worst critics. And so I work with instilling self-compassion a lot because once we do that, we're in a much better place to be in healthy relationships with others.
Definitely. And the other thing that's interesting, you talk about to be content instead of process focused. You say people fight over money or in-laws and things like that, but there's something deeper down that's an emotional trigger. So how do you get to that deeper emotional trigger down there?
Excellent. Right. To be process rather than content. Exactly. Yes. May I give you an example?
Yes.
Okay. So process content would be the following. You have, let's make it a little bit stereotypical, okay? Wife is yelling at husband, you're never home, you're at work too much, and even when you come home, you're always on your stupid phone.
Yes.
And so then they start arguing, no, I'm not. You're on the phone more than me. Look who's talking. And they start arguing about that. So that's the content level.
Yes.
Really, it's not about the phone. So if we explore then, what is she really feeling? She's wondering, do you care about me? Do I matter? Is everything else more important to you than I am? Do I deserve your time?
Right.
Do I still matter?
Yes.
And so by him just arguing about the content, he's missing what's really underneath. So even if they solve the content and he puts his phone away during dinner time, they haven't solved the underlying issue.
Right.
And so that's what we work on. Like, what are you feeling when you're telling your husband, I sense this, what's going on for you? Where are you feeling it in your body?
Right.
And we help them create their own awareness of what's going on underneath so that we can address it.
That's a great idea. Now, typically they say that males are reluctant to go to therapy and get into these feeling things, but they may be changing. We have a lot of male listeners, and I work with introvert and shy males. What's your stance on that? Are men more into this, or is it still primarily a female desire to be in therapy and things like that?
Listen, I can tell you with my couples, the men are very actively engaged, and it is a pleasure. And Yes, they're engaged and they're motivated and they're working hard. And I haven't seen in general that the wives of my couples are doing better, so to speak, in the empathy road. As a matter of fact, sometimes it's the women who are more critical or more in pursuit or more angry.
Right.
And the wife, says, come on, if I only knew the secret recipe to make her happy,
Interesting. Yeah, things are changing in some ways, more acceptance of therapy among males. In certain cultures, too. Some cultures are resistant to therapy, like my culture, Latin cultures. But hopefully that's changing. Now, the other thing is there's an important aspect, something called attachment styles. I think you also get into that, where, the emotional bonding we have with early in our parents can actually affect our later adult relationships. And there's one style called the anxious style. People that are very, overly dependent, perhaps, or, very anxious to not to lose their mate. But on the other hand, this is a little counterintuitive. Some people may argue that actually dependence can be healthy in certain ways. It's a natural thing. And in collectivist societies is more common. We actually are very popular in India, for example, and some countries where, it's good to be part of a group and to be dependent. So how do you see that? How do you see the dependent versus independent aspect of things? Should we be dependent in some ways on our partner?
How about if I answer option C? I think there's healthy dependence and understanding that none of us are created to be solitary.
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, the worst punishment for any human being where a person loses their sanity is solitary confinement.
Right.
So, yes, we all need each other. We're not the Marlboro man, riding off by himself with a cigarette.
Exactly.
And at the same time, we don't want to be totally dependent on other people to fill the emptiness within, because it's bottomless. So I would vote for interdependence, that we have attachment from cradle to grave. Right. It's not just babies who need it. We need it. We crave it. We want to encourage it from a healthy way, because there's unhealthy dependence and there's healthy dependence.
Yes, I agree with you. I think that's, interdependence is a great concept. And then we have people that are avoidant, that avoid relationships or intimacy, sexaholics, workaholics, alcoholics, and they are afraid to be hurt. Maybe their parents hurt them in some ways. And then we do have the secure attached, people that are emotionally secure, are able to love and be close to others and intimate. Now, let me ask you this, Ellen, this is kind of a counterintuitive idea, but you know how we hear that love yourself first, so others can love you back. But some research shows that you need to be loved first before you can love. And I'll give you an example of that. Let's say a secure attached person goes in with an avoidant attached, and the avoidant attached through the years avoids them psychologically and even in terms of sexual and physical and emotional, and they maybe lose some of their self-esteem. I don't feel worthy enough. Or on the other hand, if someone's anxious or avoidant and they get involved with a secure person, that might help them in a healing process. How do you think of that take? That's a little bit counterintuitive.
I actually like it. I think both have merit to them because it totally depends on a person's experience. Yes. You are so right that our early experiences shape our feelings of self-respect. And when a baby gets a smile mirrored, when we know our needs matter, we grow up feeling that we matter. And then we're in a position to be able to love in a healthy way. And without that, it is so much harder. Yes. So I would say it's a circle, and a circle doesn't have a clear beginning or end. As that child, we need to be loved so that we can love. Once we're loved, right? Once we're loved, then we need, again, our own sense of self. For example, when we tell a child, you must share. Yes. If the child doesn't yet have a secure sense of this is mine, oh, here, you have one, then it's really not fair to force a child who's too young to share, because they don't even yet have a sense of mine and yours and boundaries. So he can't give away what he doesn't even own. Right. So we need to have a sense of, yes, this is me and I have worth. And once I know I have worth, then I'd like to share it with you.
But how about in an adult relationship? Let's say you're past the childhood stage. And let's say you're a secure person. You can be intimate, you can trust. But then you get in a relationship with someone who's very avoidant, who doesn't even talk to you much or make love with you. And over time, could that reduce your self-esteem? Could it affect you as a secure person and make you insecure?
Very much so. And we have a lot of victims of abusive behavior and neglectful behavior, which,
Right.
start out healthy, but
Yes.
eventually any person is not invincible. And we start to question our own self-respect. Like, do we matter? I guess I don't matter if my own spouse doesn't find me interesting or worth spending time with, and it's extremely painful.
Yes.
And people can break from it. It's
Definitely. Sad.
yes.
And how about the other way around? I mean, I've had experts here on codependency, and they say, well, if you try to heal someone, it can be difficult for both of you. But is it possible for an insecure person to be healed by a secure person in a relationship?
I believe a secure person in a relationship can offer a lot. By offering respect, then the pains in childhood and the wounds in childhood, let's say, that were not nourished in a healthy way, can all of a sudden start to blossom. At the same time, though, it's not instead of the person's internal work. There was somebody, I wish I remember right now whose quote it was, because I would like to credit it,
Yes.
but and something externally cannot totally fix something internally.
Right.
So
That makes sense.
if I'm missing self-respect, popularity is bottomless. So that means that's the person who,
Yes.
unless they have an audience, they feel empty. So
Yes.
they don't have that core sense of self. And eventually you can't have an audience 24/7 for the rest of your life. So then what?
Yeah, because the danger, according to some experts, is that you have a dysfunctional relationship if the person that heals becomes so-called codependent on the person they're trying to heal, and then vice versa. So it could be, say, a very dependent, maybe even a damaging relationship. So how do you draw the line between, helping your partner and being an enabler to, their issues?
Excellent. I think it goes back to what we were talking about with healthy dependence and unhealthy dependence. And the question, the litmus test is, if I'm helping you,
Yes.
because it's all about me. It makes me feel good to help you, exclusively. And it's all about my need to be needed.
Yes.
That's already unhealthy. If I'm helping you because I care about you, I'd like to be a good guest for you on your show so that it's good for your listeners. And we have a cycle. You want to help me get my message out and get my book out. So we're helping each other.
All right, Ellen,
And
good. So we're not codependent, Ellen. We're okay.
that's right.
Okay, we're interdependent, right?
There you go.
I like that. Now, this is something, kind of a special bonus I want to bring to our listeners. You actually do what we call real-time relationship analysis, I believe. And I have a young man here who's my producer, Reggie, who's a single young man. He's kind of shy and introvert, and he wants to actually meet a nice lady and go on a date. And he really hasn't been on many dates in his life. He's in his mid-20s, a brilliant gentleman. He comes actually from an autistic background, but he's actually graduated from university, so he's extremely intelligent. What can we do to help him? And by the way, Reggie, introduce yourself to Miss Ellen.
Hi, I'm Reggie.
Hi, Reggie. Nice to meet you.
And we have like a little challenge. I said, Reggie, if you get a date in 30 days, I'll pay for it. And he's had a little challenge doing that. So how can you help him?
Good. So, Reggie, what makes you want to go on a date?
Well, I would really like at this point in my life some like companionship, like female companionship more than just like friends, or family. Just kind of like somebody who I can just show a side of myself that I don't really show to anybody.
Right. So it sounds like you want somebody special, and that would make your life more meaningful. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. So what kind of person, tell me like 2 qualities that make you like somebody and respect somebody.
I like when somebody is honest with me and they're honest with themselves.
Very nice, Reggie. We got a smart cookie here, huh?
We do. So honest with you and honest with themselves. So somebody who could be real. And Reggie, what do you think you can bring to the relationship? What are you going to offer this young lady?
Well, I'll be honest with him, and I'll be open with him.
Wow. And is that, how do you start a relationship and build on that trust so that young woman can look you in the eye and know that she could be safe with you. She can lean on you.
I guess just being honest with how I like about how I feel about things, just like if I say I understand you want to do this or whatever, or maybe I want to do this but you don't want to, so I respect that, so like just kind of like be open.
So Ellen, if we were to progress here, what would be like I don't know, a statement you can give Reggie, or any kind of tip to meet that nice lady, let's say in the next 30 days? How would you phrase it?
Okay, so first of all, I would take a longer amount of time
Of
and really, really help him magnify what motivates him so that he could create a visualization of all the gains. And then we would explore the obstacles as to what is holding him back. And once he has that clear, we would put it out in front of him, and we would help him just take a baby step and see what that's like. And so right now, Reggie, I would ask you, what is the first step that you might choose to take to get this young woman who's going to trust you and value you and appreciate your intelligence? Give me one step.
Ask her how she feels.
Okay. Before that step, that's great. That's great. What are you going to do to have a girl by your side so that you can ask her how she feels? Where are you getting her? Where are you finding her?
Well, when I go out, I'll just kind of like, maybe if I go to a coffee shop or something, like just kind of like and go there recurrently, maybe I'll just like meet with somebody there or whatever, and kind of just like build a rapport, and then build up to, hey, do you want to go to a movie or a bookstore?
Is that too fast, Ellen, or is that okay if you ask her out to a movie?
I wonder, Reggie, everybody's different. You might get yes from somebody. Okay. Another girl might prefer a baby step first when you say, can I join you? Do you mind if I sit here and we have coffee together?
Okay, good.
And then just get to know her a little bit. Right. So, Reggie, how about if we hold you to this? And I would love if you would text me and let me know how you do.
Okay. So we're going to have Reggie married off in 60 days, right? Maybe? Or at least a nice date or something, right?
Reggie's homework is by his own mouth, right? He's going into the coffee shop and he is going to just look at a girl who he thinks looks nice and ask if he could sit with her. And Reggie, if that girl doesn't work, then you're going to try somebody else. But you're not giving up because you have the visualization in front of you of the relationship that you really want.
That's beautiful. So, Reggie, you got a matchmaker on your case now, okay? She's going to make you do this, okay? So but I like this. So you said magnify motivation is number one, and you said visualize the gates. So when you say gates, you mean the ways to do this, or how do you mean that?
I don't know if I said gates. I wonder if it was not clear. Visualize the dates, visualize the steps.
Dates. Dates right. as in timelines?
Exactly. Visualize the success. Visualize him out on a date in a healthy, positive interaction. Okay. See himself doing it. Practice that. And then slice it thin into small little steps and just master one step at a time.
Okay. Although gates could be a nice metaphor of openings of how to do this.
I'll take it.
And then magnify motivation, I kind of like that. So make your motivation big. Like, what is it that really drives you? And in love and relationships.
Exactly.
And that's great. So this is something that can be very useful for a lot of people, and maybe in other areas too. Maybe in your dream job, your career, something that's holding you back in life. Maybe a bad habit or you want to overcome, a lifestyle change. I can see how this could work in many ways. This kind of process you have.
It absolutely can. I had a young man I was working with last night who told me he hates confrontation and he has a better job offer. But when he visualizes telling his boss he's leaving, it's just more comfortable to stay. And what we did in that case is we magnified his discomfort and showed him he was lying to himself. I said, you hate your job. You're in isolation. You don't have coworkers. They're not dependent. They don't keep what they tell you. So you've got one tiny little piece of comfort. That's the comfort of avoiding confrontation, but about 10 pieces of discomfort. Yes. So what are you choosing?
That's interesting. So I was going to ask you, because you seem very affirming, like you're very nice. Do you ever get on people's case? Do you ever get a little tough with them, or like in this case, or not critical but tough?
I can be tough when I'm worried that somebody is going to hurt themselves, or and I ask them permission at times to be directive.
Yes.
I had a teenager that I was working with that once at 3 o'clock in the morning decided she was so angry and she went out somewhere that was really not safe. And I told her, either you're walking home right now with me on the phone, or your confidentiality goes out the window because you're not home and I'm calling your parents. You pick. So, and we got her home.
That's good. Yeah. So there are times when you're a little bit directive, and I guess, like you said, magnified discomforts can be useful for some people.
Absolutely.
And the people that are stuck. Well, this has been an amazing time today, Ellen. I really enjoyed it. I think listeners will gain a lot of knowledge here. And I feel like we're in some kind of like workshop, some kind of a healing, love healing workshop right now. And you're one of the master teachers. And and then
thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And Reggie, I think you got some things that you can work on this week. Now, do you do any kind of coaching, therapy through other means than person?
I do. Currently, I have remote clients actually across the world. I work with some people in Israel, in Switzerland, and internationally. The website is awindowwithin.net.
Yes.
And I'd love to invite your listeners to go out and get my book and give me feedback. Like you said, that's when ice cream is not enough, even in California. And I have an email that I'm more than happy to give, which is awindowwithin@gmail.com. And I'd love to hear.
Perfect. Well, and it's been a grand pleasure having you on the show. I think the main thing here is loving yourself and also learning how to be empathetic toward others. I think that's something we're learning today. And taking little steps at a time. And like you said, magnifying our vision and our motivation for what we really want in life, and being honest with ourselves and others. So it's been a tremendous lecture. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you reaching out. How did you find me?
I think we did a little research on top relationship people. So you're one of the people that came up, and you're definitely doing a great job. So again, anyone that's interested in talking about the show today, or if you have any questions or want to be a guest on a future show, you can reach us at lovetype4u@aol.com. That's LOVETYPE, the number 4, letter U @AOL.com. You can see our website at loveuniversity.love and call us at 310-226-8090. So again, thank you, Ellen, for being our guest lecturer for this week. And until next time, Love University students, please put away your notepads, your iPads, your phones, your computers. And until next time, Love University. Dr. Avila.